Hi, Charles of SirBookSage here, and today I am doing the Kwanzaa Reading Challenge. This was a reading challenge created by Njeri from ONYX Pages. I will link her original video down below. And this is dealing with Kwanzaa. Now, Kwanzaa runs, I think, from December 26th through January 1st, 7 days. And there are 7 Kwanzaa Principles, one for each day. And Njeri has come up with a reading challenge to find books that fit each of these principles. And this reading challenge does not require you to add new books, to read anything new. So you can just look at the things perhaps you're currently reading or have books you've read and just use those to fill in your list. So you don't have to do any more reading if you're already bogged down. You can just jump in and participate. And you don't have to be someone who celebrates Kwanzaa either. This is open for anyone to participate in. And Njeri was kind enough to ask me if I wanted to participate in this. So this is my video. Now, the first principle is Umoja. Means unity. And for unity, I am going with a book I recently reread, and that is Ursula K. Le Guin's Planet of Exile. This is part of her Hainish cycle. She has a series of books that all center around the same kind of created universe. And this is one of the shortest ones, but this is one of my favorite ones. And one of the main themes that you see in a lot of the Hainish stories is you have this, what's called League, and it's like a whole bunch of planets that have joined together, like a galactic sort of government thing. And it's mostly humans. And they've gone out and found all these planets where there are native populations. And they establish some form of like little Terran colony on all these worlds to kind of learn what they can about the species and different races and peoples living there, and to just kind of keep an eye on them. And then once the planet reaches its certain level of technology, they're invited into the League. And in this particular book, there's a Terran colony that's been cut off, and they've been stranded for like about 600 years with no contact from the League. So they don't know what's going on out there. There was hints of a galactic war taking place, and they've pretty much been cut off now for a long time, for many generations. And on this particular planet, and what was interesting to revisit this book after about 30 years is there's certain themes in here that I see now in George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series. And one of the similarities is the seasons here are very long. Now, in this particular book, each season lasts 15 years, whereas in A Song of Ice and Fire, you never know how long each season's going to last. Winter could last 5 years, a couple of years, could last 10 years. It always varies. And here, though, they're 15-year seasons. And as a result of this, you have, when winter comes, winter's absolutely devastating and brutal. You're buried in like 10, 20 feet of snow easy. And it passes into winter very quickly. Once the snow starts, it starts. And then within a matter of a week, you're going to be completely buried. So this particular book starts at the tail end of autumn, and it's about to move into winter. And there's a new threat because every winter there's all these tribal groups in the north who just make their way down through everyone's territory to go somewhere down south, far below all these main people here. And the people living on this planet are all like these small little tribes. And these northern tribes all just kind of come in hundreds here, 100 there, and they just take anything in their path. They'll attack you, steal your cattle, steal your crops, just to keep living. They live off the land as they go until they get wherever it is that they go south. And then when winter's over, they make the same trek back north. But this particular winter, somebody has united all of these northern clans. And instead of them just trickling down, there's like 50,000 of them all coming all at once. And you have this small group of natives in their tribe who lives near this Terran colony. And the Terran colony has their own little sort of isolated city on the water. And they have to join forces together, put aside their prejudices, and because they don't like each other, they don't understand each other. and there's a lot of misconceptions and prejudice between them. But they have to put all those aside, find a way, otherwise none of them are going to survive. So this book is about seeking a way to find that unity between completely different cultures and peoples. So really, really enjoyed rereading this book. It's been a long time. Next up is, and let's see if I can pronounce this correctly, Kujichagulia, and that is self-determination. And for self-determination, I am going with the character of Thomas Covenant, who's the main character of Stephen R. Donaldson's Thomas Covenant Chronicles. Now, this was originally a trilogy that was put out in the 70s, and then there was a follow-up trilogy. Recently, he's put out a 4-book series that closes the whole story out. I've read the first 2 trilogies many, many times. These are top 3 favorite fantasy series ever for me. I have not read the last 4. One of my 2018 goals is to finally reread the first 6 and then finally read the last 4. But anyway, Thomas Covenant is a writer. He's from our world. But he's a writer who lives an isolated life because he has leprosy. And he's lost 2 fingers in his hand from the disease. He's divorced. He's the most miserable bastard you're ever going to meet in your life. And through circumstance, he ends up getting transported into this place called the Land, where there's magic, and there's this sort of dark lord, a Sauron kind of dark lord, who one of his main names is Lord Fowl. He's got many, many names, but Lord Fowl was basically when the creator of this land created this planet. Lord Fowl kind of started doing his own things and adding his own things in there. The creator got mad at him, threw him down out of the heavens onto this planet, and set up the Arch of Time without thinking about it, which trapped Lord Fowl inside the Arch of Time on this world. So Fowl now just wreaks havoc all across this world because the creator can't intervene anymore, because if the creator reaches his hand through the Arch of Time, the creator will destroy the Arch of Time, which will destroy the world. So these people are stuck with Lord Fowl. Through a scheme, Thomas Covenant ends up being transported into this land. And he has this white gold wedding ring, which wields this wild magic. And wild magic exists outside the Arch of Time. So he can either save everybody or destroy everybody. And both sides, good and bad, want to use him in their own ways to save them or destroy them, because Fowl wants the arch broken so he can escape. But the reason I picked this for self-determination is I have never seen a character in fantasy more self-determined than Thomas Covenant. Initially, he believes none of this is real. It's all a dream, so his actions have no consequences. He wants no part. Everyone thinks he's the reincarnation of Beric Halfhand, like their greatest hero. And they're falling all over him, giving him whatever he wants. And he just hates everybody. He hates himself. He hates life. He's given this thing called Hurt Loam, which restores all of his nerves and brings him back to health. And he looks at that as poison and fear, because he knows this isn't real. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be a leper again. So I can never forget that I'm a leper, and I can never let anyone treat me any other way than me being a leper. And this whole psychological makeup of his really rules how he thinks. And he's just absolutely determined to not give a crap, to not get involved, to not do anything anyone wants him to do. And then eventually he starts to care, and eventually comes to believe. And he's known here as the unbeliever. That's what they name him as. They give him this sort of title. But his determination of not believing and then believing, and his determination to do whatever it takes, to make any sacrifice to help these people. I mean, it's fascinating to watch his character arc through the 6 books that I've read. And again, good and bad, he's the most self-determined character I've ever seen in any fantasy literature. Next up is Ujima, which is Collective Work and Responsibility. And with this one, I'm actually going to go with The Night's Watch from George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. This is book 1, A Game of Thrones, which the TV series is named after. So far, there's 5 books published. There's supposed to be 2 more. Whether he can wrap the whole series up in 2 more, I wouldn't be surprised if it needs at least 3 books, but we'll see. But anyway, this is the Kingdom of Westeros, the 7 Kingdoms. And it's very sort of styled after Great Britain. A lot of influences of this story are the War of the Roses and the 100 Years' War. So there's some of those constructs and themes are built into this story, but it's its own unique world, its own unique set of characters. Just fascinating characters in here. But in the northern part of Westeros, let's say this is Westeros here. Up here, north of Winterfell, which is the northernmost kingdom, you have this like 900-foot tall wall of ice that goes from sea to sea that cuts the whole northern little section off from everybody else. And that wall is maintained and guarded by the Night's Watch. Now, the Night's Watch are people who are sent from all the different lords who rule all these different like realms. They send them there to the Night's Watch, because the Night's Watch is, you take a vow to become a Night's Watch. You never marry, you're celibate. It's an unsustainable place. So you can only have Night's Watch if all these lords send people there. And in the past, it was a noble thing to become a Night's Watch. You would often have the younger sons of lords go there because there's nothing else for them to do. They can't inherit because they've got multiple older brothers. So they're all sent there. So basically, they guard the realms of men, which is part of their oath, from everything that's north of that wall. So you have that collective work and responsibility where the Night's Watch can't exist on its own because they don't have offspring. So it's not like they can be their own self-contained sort of realm. They are only completely remanned by people sending people there constantly to keep their numbers up. The Night's Watch is that collective work and responsibility of the whole realm of Westeros to have these people up there and guard them, even though most people don't even know what the hell they're guarding them from at this point. Next up is Ujama, which is Cooperative Economics. And for this one, I'm going with the Dragon Riders of Pern series. This is a really ratty copy of the very first Dragon Riders of Pern trilogy. And the reason I'm going with this for Cooperative Economics is Pern is a planet that was colonized by humans from Earth. And they didn't realize when they first got there that there was a danger there that made society difficult to survive. And so basically you have this planet, you have all these sort of lords with these holds. Their holds are like their territory, similar to that sort of feudal system again. And you have the Dragon Riders, which are men and women who telepathically bond with fire-breathing dragons. And the Dragon Riders live up in these mountains, in these big carved out, what are called dragon wares. And they live up there. And because they live inside a mountain, they're not self-sustainable in terms of food. Now, I mentioned the Night's Watch in the previous one. They're self-sustainable in terms of feeding themselves because they have cattle, they have livestock, they trade, they do whatever they need to do to feed themselves. They just can't man themselves, but they're able to take care of themselves, the ones who are there. The Dragon Riders are incapable of taking care of themselves. There's nowhere to grow crops or anything, so they're 100% reliant upon the lords in their holdings to basically give them tithings to keep them going. And the reason the Dragon Riders exist is every once in a while this thing called thread falls from the sky, and thread will burn anything it touches except for pretty much stone. It's about it. So when thread falls, the Dragon Riders mount their dragons and fly out, and they fly around trying to burn all this thread out of the sky to keep it from falling and destroying things. And so there's this cooperative economics between the two. The lords sustain the wares with food and water and everything they need to live. And the Dragon Riders and their dragons keep the lords and their holds and their people from being destroyed by this thread. And of course, the series opens up where there hasn't been threadfall in maybe 100 years. No one alive has seen it. So they're all similar to A Song of Ice and Fire, where they're starting to question, like, why do you really exist? There doesn't seem to be a need for it anymore. Okay, next up is Nia, which is purpose. And for this one, I am going to go with the character Anya Sanwoo from Who Fears Death by Nnedi Okorafor. Now, this is one of the best books I've read this year. Hands down, it may be the best book I read. I'm actually reading one more book at the moment that might take the top spot for me this year. If it doesn't, however, then Who Fears Death might be my number one read. And Anya Sanwoo this is an interesting society because this is a post-apocalyptic Africa, and she is basically a child of rape between, I think, the Nuru or the Nura and the Okeki. And she was brought into existence through rape by this Nuru guy who wanted a sorcerer who wanted her a son, particularly from this Okeki sorceress woman. And that he was going to do all these things with and wipe out all the other Okeki and just carry out genocide. And Anya Sanwoo, being a girl, she wants to be a sorcerer, and they're not supposed to be allowed to be sorcerers, and she doesn't care. She is just, this is my purpose, this is who I am, this is what I want to be, and no one is going to keep me from it. So she's a very driven person throughout this book. And she starts off going down this road for what she believes is her purpose, and then in doing that discovers what her greater societal purpose is. And it's a brutal, harsh, and beautiful and wonderful story. And HBO has commissioned it, and they're going to be turning it into a series. So I'm really looking forward to that. They've got their work cut out for them to do justice to this, because it's quite a monumental book, and I highly recommend you read it. And next up is Kuumba, which is creativity. And I am actually returning back to the Dragon Riders of Pern series. And separate from the main trilogy, there was this Harper Hall trilogy that was published around the same time. The events in this overlap the events in the Dragon Riders original trilogy. And besides the lords in their holds and the Dragon Riders in their dragon wares, you have the Harper Hall. You have Harpers. And Harpers are kind of bards. They're musicians, and they're also teachers. Like most holds will have a harper trained by the Harper Hall who lives there, and he educates them. He teaches them how to read, to write. They learn their histories of Pern and everything through them. And the Harpers are great for communicating and spreading information around. And when they want to kind of get ideas into people's heads and help out and kind of influence society and how society thinks, they'll craft songs. And then they'll teach the songs to all the Harpers, and the Harpers will then go out and they'll teach that song, and they'll start singing that song in halls, and people will start learning it. And they're really influential without a lot of people even noticing. But Meneley, this is her here, she was born in a small little fishing hold on the sea. And her life is determined for her. She's going to grow up and she's just going to be part of this house and fish and all that stuff. But she's a prodigy. She's a natural when it comes to music. And there's an old harper who lives there who realizes and recognizes this and wants her to be able to explore her creativity. And her family doesn't allow her. And it's her whole journey of finding a way to break through all of the societal things obstacles in her way to become a harper herself. And a lot of it's a personal journey because she's so browbeaten down by her father and her family to think that she has no talent and is kind of worthless in a way. But it's a wonderful trilogy, a wonderful story, and this is the first thing that came to mind with creativity, because the Harpers are all about creativity, and they use that creativity to help the whole society of Pern. And last up is Imani, which is faith, and that's the seventh principle. And for this one, I am going to go with the Darini series by Catherine Kurtz. Now, this is the first original trilogy. I have like 13 books in this series. And this is another one that's similar in some ways, where it's a sort of medieval kind of England kind of setup, where you have this kingdom of Gwynedd. And it's a lot of similarities. But in this particular place, you have humans, your regular humans, but you also have the Darini, who are kind of quasi-sorceress people. They possess some sort of magic and sorcery. And in the past here, there was a great purging where the church just feared magic so much and thought it was meddling too much. They just went on a killing spree and started killing as many Darini as they could back in their past. So at this point in society, being all the people who are Darini kind of keep it hidden. They're very, very cautious. There are very, very few exceptions to it. Morgan, who is like the king's champion, he's Darini, and he's out in the open about it, and he doesn't care who knows it, and he's not going to live a life of fear. But the first book, Darini Rising, opens up with King Brian being killed by a sorceress. And his young son, Kelson, is set to eventually be crowned king. And Morgan is his main protector, and everyone around Kelson is trying to keep Morgan away because Morgan's Darini, and they fear him and they're afraid of him. And the church is completely still outspoken against the Darini powers. But where faith comes into play is faith itself is huge in this series because the church is so powerful. But Morgan's cousin, Duncan MacLean, is a priest, and Duncan's also a Darini. And Duncan is one of the characters that sort of carries out this struggle to how do these two things, how does the faith and the church and Darini and sorcery coexist with each other? And Duncan plays that out as an internal struggle throughout the series. And that's my Kwanzaa reading challenge. This was really, really interesting. I'm hoping Njeri does this again next year. I'm going to start thinking about this throughout this 2018 as I read which books that I read throughout the year I might fit into these categories for next year. But if you're interested in this, this is a nice challenge. It, again, doesn't involve any extra reading if you don't want it to. But these are all really good things to think about, even if Kwanzaa is nothing that you celebrate. I don't celebrate Kwanzaa, but it's always a joy to learn about things and to learn more about things that matter to other people as well. And I was quite honored to be asked by Njeri to participate in this. And so anyone watching this, if you want to take part, again, it runs through January 1st, so feel free, enjoy. And I am going to wrap it up here. I am Charles of SirBookSage. Happy reading.